Hi, my name is Susan Mayberry, and I am one of the team members at Invested. I want to welcome you to the 2020 Montgomery County Community Foundation Scholarship Workshop. And even though we can't meet face-to-face this year, we're glad that you're here, and we hope that this information will be very valuable to you and that you'll know that you have a resource as you go through your student's senior year of high school to reach out to at any time. Just want to tell you a quick little story about why we do what we do and the ways that we try to help. So we help students and families file the FAFSA. We make sure that you understand what the deadlines are, the importance of those deadlines, and getting the FAFSA filed. We also talk a lot about finding free money, scholarships and grants, things like that. That's the box with the bow on it. We push that a lot and want students to spend time doing that. We also talk about the cost of college. Now, what you won't hear us say is, oh, don't apply to that school because it's too expensive. But we do think it's important that you compare costs as you're going through this process. That's an important thing to do, just to understand the net price, which we'll talk more about later, of that program or that institution for your family. And then we talk about finding the right fit. Finding the right fit, the program, the institution, that's a social fit, that's also a financial fit, and an academic fit. And we'll talk more about those in a few minutes as well. We put the box with the bow on it again because we can't stress enough how important it is that students look for that free money out there. And then we do discuss student loan options because we want you to understand what those options are and to be able to make wise choices when it comes to selecting loans if that's part of your college funding plan. All of that to prevent you and your family from looking like the guy at the end falling off the cliff and not knowing what to do. So let's talk about how we can handle some of these things. We're just going to chat about why college is important or why education after high school is important. Steps to choosing a career and a major as you go through this senior year. We're going to talk about where the money comes from, so different types of financial aid. We're going to touch on the FAFSA, really important part of the process. Understanding college costs, which goes back to that net price calculator and comparing costs of schools. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of social media on this process and things that you can do to help your student use those as tools in this process. And again, just to confirm, we're here to help at any part of this process. So I think that you'd all agree it's important that we have some kind of training or education beyond high school. The graph here just shows on the right-hand side weekly income, earnings based on level of education. When we talk to students about this, a lot of times we'll say, hey, the more you learn, the more you earn. So those are just important things to understand and to recognize and I think just see visually. And then on the other side of that are unemployment rates. The more education you have, the less likely you are to be unemployed, or even if you're unemployed for a time, I don't think that time is as long based on your level of education. We are trying to make a positive impact on these statistics in the state of Indiana. 70% of college graduates do have college-related debt. It's very common, very normal. The key, though, is finding a balance. 50% of those college graduates are surprised by how much they owe. Here's how that happens. It's really easy to take out student loans, and a lot of students do it whether they need the loans or not. And then when they finish school, they'll go through a process called exit counseling. And in that process, they're shown their loan balance, what they owe. Half of them look at that number and say, I don't know where that came from. I don't remember borrowing that money. We don't want that to happen to any family we ever talk to. Again, we want you to understand the impact of loans, making wise decisions about them, and then of course, how does that impact your future budget once we're finished with school or finished with the degree? The average student loan debt in the United States is $37,000, which is about $350 a month for at least 10 years. Indiana is, we're up there, we're at $29,200, which is probably about $300 a month in a loan payment. So just understanding again the impact of budget on based on borrowing money. Student loan debt is actually higher than credit card debt in this country. Our student loan debt is at $1.5 trillion. There are lots of factors that contribute to that. And again, we're just trying to educate people and hoping that once they have more information, they can make some wise decisions. So let's talk about steps that we need to take and things to look at as far as choosing a career path and major as we get ready to decide on that program after college. After high school. So we've got some free tools that we list on our website, but just want to highlight a couple of them here. So the first one would be My Next Move. It's mynextmove.org. It's a great tool to just do some research about what do I want to be, or what are some things that I think are interesting. So looking with keywords like I like to write or I want to build, or looking at specific industries, specific careers. And then there's a quiz that you can take, and I think this is interesting, and I would recommend not doing this just one time, but as you go through the process, take this quiz, see how consistent your answers are. But once you answer all those questions, it will sort of point you in a direction of different career paths that you can look at. My Next Move also talks about the amount of education you need to get into a career field. So what type of degree or program or certificate do you need to get into that career, to do that job? And then the job outlook. So is the job or career you're looking into going to be around in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What does that look like? And then what's the average salary in that job? And this should have an impact on your choice, especially when it comes to borrowing money to pay for your education. What is that return on investment? So am I going to be making enough money to pay off any debt that I might have after getting that degree? Another good place, another good resource that we want students to be aware of is called Next Level Jobs. Basically, the state of Indiana has identified 5 industries that are high paying that need skilled workers. And so what they've said is we're going to pay for Hoosiers to get certificates within these industries to help fill some of that need within the state. So this is a great website to look at. The certificates are funded through the Workforce Ready Grant. And so I would encourage students, especially students who aren't sure they want to go that typical 4-year college path, this is a great option for them to do a little research and look at what's available out there. Another resource that we like are the Indiana in-demand jobs. And this basically will tell you jobs that are in demand, how much education do you need to have in order to get into those jobs, and then what's the average salary. So just another quick resource to use as you do your research for career paths. So we want to think about, what are our long-term goals? What type of career do I want? What type of lifestyle do I want? Which includes, where would I like to live? What kind of car would I like to drive? Things like that. And then what steps do I need to take over the next few years to make that a reality? And some of these online tools are great, but we also think that doing hands-on practical things are good as well. So we can gain some experience by doing some job shadowing. Spend some time with somebody in a career field that you're interested in. It can affirm for you, yep, this is absolutely the direction I want to go, or maybe help you understand, maybe I need to go in a different direction. Volunteering can help you with career path. It also looks really good on college applications and scholarship applications when you can show that you volunteered in your community. Doing internships, those aren't always as available as you go through high school, but certainly once you get into college, internships are important. Employers are going to be looking for that internship experience on your resume when you start applying for jobs. So another online tool that we like, once we kind of think about, okay, our career path, and we need to figure out what school or program we want to go to get into that career. Another online tool is College Navigator, and College Navigator has all kinds of information for you to help as you are researching schools and programs and institutions that fit what you're looking for. It will show you things like financial aid, net price, those types of things. Admissions, what kind of test scores, grades do we need to have to get into that institution, that school. Also things like what programs, majors they offer, even social organizations, clubs, athletic teams, things like that, and campus security, all things that we think are important as we're making a decision. So our key is that we want to find a school that offers the right major, the right program we want to study, and it's a good fit. And again, that fit is going to be academically, socially, or personally a fit, and then financially. If we change majors and or change schools, then it could add extra time, which means more money, onto completing that degree. It increased cost and potentially student debt. Now, I don't want you to think that you can't change your major, because over 80% of students change their major at least once. You just don't want to change it so many times that it impacts the time it takes you to get that degree. So along those lines, credit completion or getting done on time, this is basically sort of a rule of thumb to help you achieve that. Just remember the phrase 15 to finish. It's completing 15 credit hours each semester or 30 credit hours in an academic year to get that degree on time. And an academic year would be fall, spring, and you can include summer, but you have to be a little bit careful about that because you have to make sure that the classes you need are offered during that summer. But basically it's 15 credit hours to finish each semester or 30 hours in a year. And you can see from this slide what happens more times than not is the example on the right, where it takes students more than just the 4 years to finish a 4-year degree. And then what can happen is that we're running out of aid, potentially, and having to figure out how to pay for that last semester or even that last year out of our own pocket without much aid available. So let's talk about where that money comes from to help us pay for college. There are basically 5 sources. The first is the federal government. That's the largest provider. Then we have the state of Indiana. We do a good job as a state. We're in the top 10 as far as funding to provide to students to help pay for education. The colleges or institutions themselves would be another entity that helps to provide funding. There are private donors, such as a community foundation or a business. And then the 5th place is your family or your resources. And we want to help you figure out what that piece is sooner rather than later. So that's where the money comes from. Here's how it gets used. There's gift aid, the free stuff. We've talked about that. It's grants and scholarships. And then there's self-help aid, which would be things like working part-time to help earn a little money to help pay for those costs, setting aside money to save to help pay for those costs, and then student loans would also be considered a type of self-help aid. And all of these different types of aid would make up a financial aid package or a financial aid offer from a college or an institution. So let's talk about each one of these in a little more detail. So let's talk about grants first. If you've heard of a federal grant, it's probably the Pell Grant. It's been around for a long time. The government actually sets this dollar amount every summer before the school year begins. So we know that going into the 2021 school year, if a student receives the full amount of the Pell Grant, it's $6,345. This is free money that doesn't have to be repaid from the federal government. Next would be the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or shortened SEOG. That could be up to $4,000. Here's how this one works. If a student qualifies for any amount of that Pell Grant, and the college where they attend receives SEOG funds as well as Pell Grant funds, then they could receive a combination of those two grants. There's also something called the Federal Teach Grant. You can receive up to $4,000 a year to help pay for your education to become a teacher. However, after graduating, within 8 years, you have to teach for 4 years at a low-income, high-need school. Those are defined or identified by the Department of Education. Otherwise, that grant you received during college would actually turn into a loan that you have to pay back. So you got to pay attention to some of those details and guidelines. Next would be state grants. These are two of the most common ones. 21st Century Scholars. If your student's a scholar, they would have signed up in the 7th or 8th grade, and it pays for tuition and fees at a state school and up to about $8,100 in tuition and fees at a private school. Also, the Franco-Bannon grant, if your student would qualify for Franco-Bannon, they go to a state school, it's called the Higher Education Award. If they go to a private school, it's called the Freedom of Choice Award. Same pot of money, just two different names depending on the type of institution that's attended. Another state grant I already mentioned is that Workforce Ready grant as well. Here's the key. If your student qualifies for a state grant, it has to be used at an Indiana institution. Federal grants can go anywhere. State grants have to be used in the state of Indiana. Let's talk about scholarships next. So with scholarships, again, students don't spend enough time looking for scholarships, and there's really 3 places that we tell them they should be looking. And this starts in high school and continues through their college career until they've received that degree or that certificate. The first place would be the colleges and universities that they're looking at or the institutions they're looking at. And then once we've narrowed down our choice and start attending somewhere, we keep looking back at that institution each year to see what's available. Colleges can offer need-based, which would be based on your household income, or merit-based, which would be based on student performance, grades, test scores, GPA, athletic ability, things like that. Next would be local and community scholarships. This is just a small list of places to look, but the key is, I think, is to stay in contact with the school counselor as they make these opportunities available for students. Some high schools might push that out through text, through email. They might have them listed in the guidance office. Just making sure we're staying in touch with the school counselor is really important. Community Foundation, you've already got a great resource right here for you, so make sure that you are aware of what the Community Foundation offers. Next would be businesses or employers within the community. If you're involved with a church, find out if there are opportunities there, and then civic organizations or the animal clubs, as I like to call them, the lions, the elks, the eagles, the moose, places like that. And then we have top free search sites. There are several out there. These are probably the top 3 that we recommend would be FastWeb, Unigo, and CapEx. Just to make sure that you're not paying to do any of these. The keyword there is free search sites. And if you run across a search site you want us to check out for you, make sure it's legitimate, we're happy to do that. So tips on searching for scholarships. This is great stuff to do over the summer just to kind of get ready and get organized to look for scholarships. You want to have sort of a scholarship resume, which would basically list all your activities in date order so that it's easy to access, easy to understand. Have some sample essays written. Every time you need to have an essay for a scholarship, you shouldn't have to start from scratch. So if you've got a couple written already, that's a good thing to do. For those national search sites, a good one to have is in 250 words, tell me why you deserve this money. That's a great one to have in your arsenal. Make sure you're paying attention to deadlines. You'll miss out on money if you miss deadlines. That's really the bottom line. So just pay attention to deadlines, stay organized, and make sure you're meeting them. Balance your time between all of those different places that you're looking. So we've got the colleges and universities, the local opportunities, the national search site. You want to balance your time between all of those. Make it fun, make it creative. Have a scholarship application party. Sit in a room with some friends, put on a timer, see how many scholarships you can apply for in a certain amount of time. And then again, watching out for scams. As I mentioned, you don't want to pay to do scholarship searches. So just be careful about things like that. But the key is spending time every week looking for and applying for scholarships. So just to make you aware that not all scholarships are for the students with the best grades or highest GPA. There are a lot of creative things out there, things you can find to help pay for college. So think about some of your favorite things and see if there are scholarships related to those. I know Coca-Cola has a $50,000 scholarship. A student from Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis won that a couple years ago. It's $50,000 spread out over 4 years. One of our favorites is the duct tape yourself and go to prom. So that's a prom dress, prom tuxedo made completely out of duct tape. Those were last year's winners, and they each won $10,000 to help pay for college for entering and winning that contest. So lots of crazy options out there to help us pay for college. We have a $1,000 scholarship. We give away 5 of them every spring. It's really easy to enter to win. It doesn't take much time at all. You just have to be 16 or older and live in Indiana. So make sure that you enter to win. It's one of the easiest scholarship applications you'll ever do. So let's talk a little bit about student employment and earning money while we're in college to help pay for those costs. So we're earning money, which means we could minimize what we need to borrow. We're also getting job and interviewing skills and experience, building a resume, networking with people, building time management skills. There's actually a study shows that college students who work part-time actually have better grades and are better at managing their time than the college students who don't. So there are a lot of good reasons for student employment other than just earning money to help pay for college. So make sure that you're checking into all of those different options. Something you might be offered through the financial aid package would be federal work study. This is basically the college saying, hey, we've set aside some funds for you. If you want to apply for a job and get that job and earn that money, then you could have a part-time job on campus, earn some money, and it goes towards college costs. So just, again, something else to be aware of to help as we pay for college. So saving for college. This slide really talks about saving for college, as in the 529 savings plan. There are some benefits there. We're not financial planners. We know about financial aid. So if you want to talk to someone about setting up a 529, I would recommend talking with a financial planner. But what I would tell you is that if you've got a hunk of money set aside that's in just a regular bank account, I would look into putting it into a 529 just because of the tax credits and things like that. But on the other side would be more, rather than saving on college, but limiting college costs. Some ways to do that are by taking AP classes or dual credit while we're in high school. That's a way to save on college. You're taking classes for free that you'd have to pay to take in college. Sometimes commuting versus living on campus is a great way to save money. And then taking online classes over the summer or doing that online sometimes can even help you finish earlier, which again is going to save on college. Okay, let's talk about loans because again, we want you to be educated about this process and understand how loans fit into that, making wise decisions. The key is that they all have to be repaid. So it's a part of financial aid that we've got to repay. So keeping that in mind, the first type of loan on the slide is a federal direct loan. It's through the federal government. The government sets the interest rate on these loans every year on July 1st, and they do take a small fee out for processing that you can see there. This loan is in the student's name only. Can be subsidized or unsubsidized. Here's what that means. If it's subsidized, the government is paying the interest while you're in college, so the balance of the loan's not going to change. If it's unsubsidized, The interest begins to accrue as soon as you take that loan out, and if you don't make interest payments, they'll just add it to the balance of the loan. There are limits to what a student can borrow all by themselves, because on this federal direct loan, there's no credit check or cosigner required. So they limit what a student can borrow each year by themselves. The first year is $5,500, the second year is $6,500, and then the third and fourth year, if we're going for a 4-year degree, would be $7,500 each year. So we've got a total of $27,000 within those 4 years that we are allowed to borrow. There's a little caveat to that, and that comes in with this Federal Direct Plus loan or parent loan. So this is where one parent borrows money to help with college costs. Again, this loan is right through the federal government. The government sets the interest rate, and they do take a small fee for processing. You'll notice that that fee on this parent loan is a bit larger than the one on the student loan. They do a credit check on the plus loan, and they're looking for adverse credit. If a parent is denied a plus loan based on that adverse credit, then a student could qualify for up to $4,000 more in unsubsidized loan money. So that's that caveat to the federal direct loan amount. And then we have private loans, which would be where a student would be the applicant sometimes, and they need someone with strong credit to co-sign. There are also private parent loans that a parent could apply for. The eligibility of these loans is based on credit score and household income. The interest rates will vary based on those things, and there are typically no fees with a private loan. So again, we're just doing some research to figure out the best path for us. Typically, we say start with that federal direct loan, and then as you're looking at options, you want to look at the benefits and the interest rates between the federal plus loan and a private loan, if we're looking at those options. All right, let's talk a little bit about the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the application for all of this aid I just talked with you about. So each year, if you want to know if your student qualifies for federal funds like grants, federal work study, federal loans, also Indiana grants, and then some institutional funds are determined by the FAFSA. You want to get this filed every year. The FAFSA tells you what's called your EFC, or your expected family contribution. This is the dollar amount that your family can reasonably be expected to pay towards cost for that year. And it's going to look at student income and assets, if they have any, parent income and assets, and then it will spit out this dollar amount to you at the end on the confirmation page of the FAFSA. So when do we need to file the FAFSA? Starting the student's senior year of high school, the FAFSA is going to open October 1st each year. So the first year we file it is the fall of their senior year, and then we want to make sure that we get it done each year for that upcoming school year. So we also have to use tax information each year on the FAFSA, and we've come up with this chart to help you understand which FAFSA you would be using. Basically, the easiest way I know to explain it is to say, what year does your student graduate from high school? You would all have 2021 grads. You're going to subtract 2 and use your 2019 taxes for the first FAFSA that you file this fall during their senior year. And then each year you just add on a tax year. We want to make sure that we understand and know the deadlines. In the state of Indiana, the deadline's April 15th. However, most colleges have earlier deadlines, so you want to find out what their deadlines are and make sure that you're getting the FAFSA submitted by the earliest one. Let's take a look at comparing college costs. As I've mentioned a couple times, there's something called net price, and colleges have net price calculators on their financial aid websites that you can use to get a good idea of, first of all, what's the total cost of attendance here, minus any gift aid or free money that your student might qualify for, and then what's left over. That's the net price, which gives us an idea then of what we need to cover through out of our own pocket, outside scholarships, maybe some student employment, or even loans. That's what that net price is going to tell you. So let's just take a look here at a net price calculation. This is actually from a state school here in Indiana. So if you're looking at an IU, Purdue, Ball State, IUPUI, these numbers are going to be pretty close to cost. So we're looking at tuition and fees, room and board, and then some additional costs for our total cost of attendance, books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses. So we've got $24,778 for this academic year. That's our total cost of attendance. And then we can see that this student potentially qualifies for $2,845 in a federal Pell Grant, $800 from the state, and another $7,010 from the institution or from the college. So we've got $10,655 in gift aid or free money. That leaves us with $14,123 as our net price. This student is a freshman because they can take out a $5,500 loan. The college is saying we've set aside $3,000 in work study funds for you. If you want to get that job and earn that money, you can. And then what we have left is $5,623. That's our remaining balance. So how are we going to cover that? And again, we want to have that idea sooner rather than later so we can make a plan to cover those costs when the time comes. Okay, so just to wrap up here, I want to talk a little bit about social media and how this impacts your student as they go through this process. My message is that your student would be wise and appropriate with their social media. I hope that you're monitoring it. They need to be professional. The first place that starts is with their email address. So if their email sounds anything like hotbunny99@hotmail.com, they should probably get a new one, a professional email address that they use to communicate with these entities, these colleges, these scholarship providers. Be engaging, be personal, network with people, network with these entities. Tell good things about yourself, things that you're involved in through your social media. Remove and take down anything that's inappropriate or that could be misinterpreted, anything that could be controversial. Make sure that you're taking those things down or simply not putting them on there in the first place. We like to talk with students about this because we think that a lot of kids think my settings are on private, only the people I want to see this can see this, and that's not really true. This on the left here is a tweet from a Division I NCAA coach. We see these all the time. And these coaches are out there looking at their recruits at their social media. So people are watching. The other story on the right is about 10 Harvard students that were admitted to Harvard, and school officials actually found private Facebook messages and kicked them all out of school. They rescinded all of their admissions offers. So those things happen all the time. Do a little research. I'm sure you could find some additional stories. So it really does matter, your social media presence. We looked at a survey of scholarship providers, and it just said, basically, do you look at your applicant's social media sites? And the bottom line is they do. They look to see whether that applicant's using good judgment, even just to get to know the applicant better in addition to what they're putting on their application. So beware and use your social media carefully. These are some actual tweets we've found. I would say you could find some doozies out there yourself, but I think the key up to this is these tweets are giving people a perception. People are judging you based on the things you put on your social media. And what I would tell you and caution you about, especially with this tweet number 2 and number 4, is that if a financial aid office were to see those tweets, they can actually take your financial aid away from you. Because we want to be using our financial aid to use it for the things it was intended for. Certainly not shopping and going to tanning beds. So please be careful, be wise and appropriate with your social media. It does matter. This is my team. Any of us are happy to help and answer questions for you at any time as you're going through this process. We'd love to talk with you. Check out our website. We've got a lot of great tools and resources out there, including to enter for our scholarship drawing. So make sure that you do check out our website. And there's additional information, even more than what I've shared with you today, out there that you can look at. And then, of course, ask questions as you have them. Connect with us on social media. This is a great way just to know where we're going to be and when. And I think our social media is pretty wise and appropriate, so you can connect with us in that way as well. There's my contact information. You can email, you can call or text that number. I'd be happy to chat with you, as would anybody on my team. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you found this information helpful and that you know that you've got a free resource as you go through this process with your student throughout the next school year. Best of luck to you, and thanks again for joining us.